Good morning and good afternoon to people who are logging in from Europe, and good evening to those of you who are logging in from Asia. Welcome to the webinar and Leadership Insights. Today we have our featured speaker, Mr. Rohit Verma, who is the CEO of Crawford Company. But before I formally introduce him, let me first and foremost thank our sponsor, Mr. Carlton Whitehead, Professor Carlton Whitehead and Whitehead family, for generously supporting our Distinguished Leadership Speaker Series. I would also like to thank our platinum sponsor of the Center for Sales and Customer Relationship Excellence, Mr. Hank Doris, for being a generous supporter of the center. And let me also request our Associate Dean and Professor of Marketing, Professor Dennis Arnett, to welcome all of you on behalf of the college. Professor Arnett.
Thank you, Atul. Margaret, our dean, could not be here today, so I'm going to welcome all of you on behalf of the Rawls College of Business. And again, I thank Carlton Whitehead. I was lucky enough to be here when Carlton was a professor here in the building and a dean, associate dean in his own right. That was when I was a young doctoral student. Obviously, I'm a little bit older now. But I welcome all of you. Welcome the Rawls College of Business welcomes you, as well as Dean Williams. And I thank Rohit very much for being involved here. And any students that are here, this is a great honor for you to be able to listen to people like him and learn from him. Well, thank you very much, and I'll send it back to Atul.
Thank you very much, Dennis. So now it's my pleasure and my honor to welcome Mr. Rohit Verma, who is the CEO of Crawford Company. Rohit comes with a lot of distinguished experience. First and foremost, at Crawford Company, which is the world's largest publicly listed independent provider of claims management and outsourcing solutions to insurance company and self-insured entities. He is managing over 9,000 full-time employees and 50,000 seasonal employees across 700 offices that serves clients in more than 70 countries. Mr. Rohit Verma brings more than 20 years of international strategic expertise and a proven track record for creating momentum and growth to Crawford. As CEO, he's focused on the company's strategy and growth, business operations, investor relations, and client relationships, with an emphasis on both technology and innovation. Mr. Verma is passionate about driving cultural and operational transformation. Today, he's going to talk about cultural and operational transformation for customer centricity. Under his leadership, Crawford redefined its strategy, uniting the organization with the single purpose of bringing value-added solutions to clients. He has driven growth from the front, launching the company's digital initiative, capturing new business and creating an imperative for client centricity. Mr. Rohit Verma sees employee engagement as the most critical enabler of any organization's success. His special interest is in identifying and developing high potential employees early in their careers to gain greater exposure and visibility within the organization. Prior to his role at Crawford, Mr. Rohit Verma served as the regional executive for the South region of Zurich, North America, where he was accountable for profitable growth and market execution. During his 10-year tenure at Zurich, Rohit also served in a number of executive management positions across underwriting, distribution, finance, strategy, and general management. His prior roles have included being the Chief Operating Officer from 2010 to 2011, CFO for small and medium-sized businesses between 2008 and 2010, and Head of Strategy for Specialties Business 2007 to 2008. Before joining Zurich, Mr. Rohit Verma was a management consultant with McKinsey & Company. He led several engagements at McKinsey, which were often cross-functional teams of strategy, finance, and IT. His focus was on insurance and banking. His work included strategy and transformation work at clients like AIG, AXA Equitable, Principal, Mass Mutual, Northwestern Mutual, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and Zurich. His career has spanned 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and North America, and he has he's worked with and led numerous global teams. In addition, he spent his time as a research engineer with 3Com Corporation. He also holds 5 patents and has authored several internet standards. In 2020, Mr. Rohit Verma was named one of Business Insurance Global Top 100, and 2012 National Underwriters magazine recognized him as a top 5 insurance executive under 40. He holds an undergraduate degree in computer engineering from the University of Delhi in India and a master's degree from Northwestern University in Chicago. He has also attended leadership programs at Cambridge University and the London Business School. He's a member of the board of directors of Crawford Company, as well as Emeritus and the World Affairs Council. He's also on the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. When away from work, he enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 children and playing golf. He's going to talk more about his family. And today he's going to speak about his leadership style, his insights, and how he's brought about a transformation to this organization. Mr. Rohit Verma, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Parvityar. Thank you so much, Professor Arnett. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here. I did not know that my team had sent you the full bio, but I appreciate it. I wish that you read this bio in front of my teenage daughter, who doesn't think that dad is cool anymore. So maybe if she heard my bio, I could win that. Although my guess is that she's going to hear all of that and say, yeah, dad, it still doesn't sound very cool. But it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to be here. And we're going to talk about a topic which I'm extremely passionate about. So I am certainly going to enjoy it, and hopefully all the listeners enjoy it as well. So since you can be anywhere in the world and watching this at any time, I'm just going to say greetings to you, and you can make that as good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, whatever works in your time zone and whatever time and geography you're watching this in. Let me take a second to share my screen so that you can actually follow along. Professor Parvityar, if you can just tell me once the screen is visible, that would be helpful.
It is.
It is. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I think you've already talked quite a bit about me, so I'm going to go over, skip over who am I. So let me talk a little bit about Crawford. So we handle claims in the simplest of way. Our purpose is to restore lives, businesses, and communities. And when I say claim, it can be anything as you're driving a car and you're backing out from your garage and you hit your mailbox, to the cancellation of the Tokyo Olympics, to a major turbine failing in a power plant, to a mine collapsing in Brazil. So we handle claims, everything from a $500 claim to a $5 billion claim. We operate in 70 countries. We have 700 offices, and every year we process somewhere around $17 to $18 billion of claims. So it's pretty significant. And if we were an insurance company, we would probably be a top 25 insurance company just based on the size of claims that we handle. We operate pretty much in all continents, but most of our 58% of our revenue actually comes from the US. And our primary customers are carriers and corporations that decide to self-insure. So I'm sure that the university is probably a self-insured entity and uses someone like us for claims. And if you don't use us, then we need to figure out why, and we need to change that. But that's a conversation for another day. So look, last 24 months will be remembered as a time when we were reminded that everything that we took for granted, right? The world as we knew it changed. I can really put it as, we sort of had a major breakdown. We almost had a stroke. And now we're sort of in the rehab phase, right? And it's going to take some time before we come out of it. It was a global risk that was not on anyone's top risk. I was probably down in the top 10. It used, when the bird flu happened back in the early 2000s, the pandemic word started to get talked about a lot more. There was a lot of discussion about it, but nobody thought that it'll be of the size and magnitude that that COVID-19 became, and would be everywhere in the world, right? People talked about resilience and business continuity planning, and they said, well, we don't really have to worry about it because we have one office in US and the other office in Philippines. So if something happens in US, we can always move things over to the Philippines office, right? Nobody had imagined that something would happen in US and Philippines and everywhere else in the middle. So most companies, countries, economies were taken off guard, and workplaces and homes were transformed overnight. Dining rooms became offices, bedrooms became offices. I've also heard stories of people working out of their closet when they have small kids because it was just so difficult. The kids were not going to school. We were all working from home. So a lot of stuff changed, right? So, and you guys, some of you are students of marketing, can understand that when that much stuff changes, your product, your placement, your promotion, everything about what you consume and how you consume also changes. So it is sort of an era of contradictions and ironies, and I'll spend a minute on it on why that is the case. You know, some businesses obviously struggle to engage, others sort of thrived at it, right? And we saw sort of three classes of business emerge. Winners, with businesses which really benefited from the pandemic or from people being at home. Adapters, businesses that decided that, you know, this is an opportunity for us to transform, and we're going to readapt ourselves to this new reality. And then businesses that struggled. And I don't want any of these companies to feel like I've singled out on them. These are purely examples, right? There are probably others that are part of it, and somebody might have a different perspective on it. So I just want to make sure that nobody thinks that we're trying to call out any of these companies specifically, and there's no other set. So this is just an example. So if you look at the winners, right? Zoom, which we're all talking on. I mean, the use of video conferencing and the use of using your camera on your computer suddenly became pretty important. In fact, a lot of us didn't really used to use a camera on our computer. It was only used by teenagers who were gaming, or when we were doing Skype or something with our family across borders. So we were really not using the camera as much. And now you can't imagine a computer without the camera. Netflix, there was no other form of entertainment. You were not going out, you were not traveling, you were not spending time outside, going to movie theaters. So Netflix. There was a renowned focus on fitness. I think the world tried to become healthier, and there were no gyms to go to. So Peloton, and then certainly Amazon, which is the mother of all kind of retail, right? So, so winners were pretty clear. Then you had adapters, right? Very traditional business models of these companies, but they adapted themselves. Pfizer, obviously, we all know, they came out with the vaccination, working with the BioNTech. Target rethought their model. If they can't get people to their mall, I mean, to their shop or to their store, how do they make sure that they get the products back to the individuals? And then there were strugglers, right, who had a structural challenge. Like, you could not go to a movie theater because it was not safe, and the movie theaters were shut down by government. Lifetime Fitness, which is a gym, as most of you know, you couldn't go there. Obviously, you couldn't fly, and you couldn't really have concerts, right? So these businesses, which had a real structural issue, a real structural challenge, really struggled. And the reason I call this an era of contradictions and ironies is because we talk about in marketing a lot about being having the customer touch, having the customer contact, being close to the customer. And if you think about it, all these things that are on the left-hand side, all the companies that are on the left-hand side of the page were virtual. They actually never touched their customer. They actually never probably contacted their customer or met with them. But they knew enough about their customer that they were able to figure out that this is the time for us to win. And you know, obviously the stock market has been volatile and things have changed, but if you just looked at their 2020 returns, right, you can see on the left-hand side of the page, the returns are a lot stronger than the right-hand side of the page. So not only did these companies do well from being connected to their customers, but you can see that clearly their economic impact of that on their stock was pretty significant, almost 200% higher than the basically the winners were, and adapters were 200% higher than the strugglers. So what are some of the common themes that we saw with the winners? First, we saw that these were built with high customer engagement, but low customer touch, right? Which was sort of the issue with the pandemic. Digital delivery mechanism with limited degradation and experience. So they could deliver their products digitally, and there was no degradation in the service or the experience of the customer because the product was being delivered digitally. So if we just think about our interaction right now, obviously an interaction, if I were sitting in a classroom with you and I could look at all of you and you could look at all of me at the same time, and we could make eye contact, and I could see the body language if you guys are actually enjoying what I'm saying so far, or you guys, some of you are falling asleep, right? I don't know that richness of interaction isn't there, but there is not as much degradation in what I'm trying to convey to you, even though it's coming to you digitally. So the digital delivery mechanism, which had limited degradation, is a very important point. Second, the revenue model was efficient, scalable, and repeatable. It was not custom, whether if I sign up for a Zoom meeting or you do or someone else does, it is not a custom thing. And the model is highly efficient. We can get hundreds and thousands and millions of Zoom meetings going on at the same time. It's very scalable, it's efficient. We can get on a Zoom meeting in less than 5 minutes. The feedback mechanism is continuous. So whether it's Zoom, whether it's Peloton, pick any of those companies on the left, they are gathering feedback all the time, right? And a lot of time it's real-time feedback, and they're taking that feedback and putting continuous improvement. I think you'll all will recall that there were issues happening with Zoom in terms of people being able to come in and security challenges with Zoom, and they immediately went and fixed that. If you remember that there was a Peloton got feedback that biking is not the only thing. They came up with other new exercises, and I think they have a treadmill as well now, and they have some yoga packs as well. So they're taking continuous feedback and then improving things. And then finally, their customer acquisition and retention approach is extremely compelling, right? They all have pretty significant value proposition, which they do a great job of communicating. And as a result of that, they can acquire customers pretty fast, and the cost of customer acquisition for them is lower than what some other businesses may have. So these were the common themes that we found among the winners when you sort of take a magnifying lens and put it on them. And I think the next 3 to 5 years will continue to push every industry. We believe that the acceleration of innovation is going to continue. We've certainly seen a lot of innovation. If you look at what we call new companies that are being formed, companies that are truly unicorns, that has been increasing. So innovation is definitely going up. Data and information is the new gold, right? Everybody wants customer data. Everybody wants buying information. Everybody wants buying patterns. And that data and information is really critical because that helps you design the next generation of products. It helps you design the next generation of customer engagement. The user base will be multi-generational, right? I FaceTime with my mom. I FaceTime with my grandmother. Sometimes my mom calls me on my landline to ask if it's okay to FaceTime, right? So I tell my mom, it's the same phone. You don't have to call me to ask me before FaceTiming. But there will be more multi-generational use of technology, right? My parents, who are both in their 70s, were ordering things online because they knew that they could not go out to the store. So it was not just my 19-year-old daughter, but the entire multi-generational group now that was interacting, and will continue to do that. I believe new risks will emerge, right? Cyber is a risk that certainly has emerged. We're seeing the conflict in Ukraine. There are new risks that are going to continue to emerge, whether those are in the form of new pandemics, those are in the form of cyber, those are in some other risks that we don't know, but new risks will emerge, and our ability to pivot pretty quickly and be dynamic is going to be really important. I think COVID will remain a challenge. I think we are sort of out of it, but there are still pockets where we hear new COVID variants. I've been hearing about this new variant that has been happening in Europe. So I think COVID variants will continue. And ESG is becoming a real consideration, right? It's I don't know how many of you follow the SEC, but if you look at the SEC, just recently came out with some very strong guidance on what they expect on ESG, and certainly it has been very prevalent already in UK as well as in Europe. So I think ESG will play a very critical role as we look forward. So this is not an exhaustive list, certainly, but I believe that this is an important list of factors that will continue to shape the industry, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe longer. And I believe that technology will be the driver of this innovation, right? Technology will be the enabler for new products, for new services. We're already seeing that. If you think about predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, something I know, Professor Parvatya, you've taught for quite some time, that's creating an unprecedented anticipation of human behavior and decision-making, right? That's what Amazon is based on. They actually, based on what you're browsing, what you're looking at, where your mouse is hovering, their algorithms in the back are making very critical decisions to figure out what is the set of products that should be present at the distribution center closest to your house, so that you can get most of the time that next day delivery, most of the time that overnight delivery. Same day delivery now, a lot of them have started. And it all goes back to the human behavior, the psychological behavior of instant gratification. If I see a product, I want it now, because if I get it a little bit later, maybe my desire to get it reduces. And so if I want a product, I want it now, and I want it delivered to me right away. And that is the biggest gap between, say, walking into Best Buy and buying the latest phone or going on Amazon and ordering it, right? And the reason why Best Buy is still there is because you can go there in 10 minutes, pick up the phone and bring back, and Amazon's trying to close that gap, but they're using predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics to really think through the behavior. And that's not the only place, but certainly they have been the pioneers. You know, virtual reality and augmented reality. I was yesterday at my son's school, and they had a STEAM program, and it was really cool. They had this little cube, and you put this cube in front of your camera, and it would create a augmented reality solar system. And you could really, you know, with your hands move through the solar system, click on a planet, expand a planet, read more about the planet. It was really cool. And again, I believe that the whole visual interaction with customers, employees is going to change. We're already talking a lot about metaverse, but I think things like the Microsoft HoloLens are going to really change how we interact with products. So, you know, if I want to really hold that camera in my hand and see how it feels, or if I want to really take that watch and put it on my wrist and see how that watch looks, which I can do at a store today, but I feel like I can't do on an online retailer, I think that gap is going to close pretty quickly with the virtual reality and the augmented reality piece. And finally, artificial intelligence, right? It's going to eliminate the manual and mundane decision-making. So human beings are actually worse at doing repetitive tasks, right? Our accuracy is very low when we actually do the same task repeatedly, which is very counterintuitive. But the reason is because we sort of program our brain and say, okay, this is pretty easy. Some of you who may have read some work from Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, he has a lot of work he's done on system 1 and system 2. And he says system 2 of our brain is the one that is making the decisions. System 1 is the one that actually creates a pattern out of that decision, so you can do it pretty fast. So what happens is we move things from system 2 to system 1 when they become pretty repetitive, and our chance of making an error actually goes up. But by doing artificial intelligence, we're actually taking that sort of mundane work and putting that away. I don't know how many of you have noticed this, but sometimes you're driving from work to home or from school to home, and you get home and you actually don't realize like you've driven that, like you actually cannot register because your brain is programmed to drive home, and you are driving home and you're navigating traffic, you're navigating stoplights, but you may not have fully registered that you've actually gotten home because you're driving with sort of your system 1. And artificial intelligence can take some of those mundane things and go away. So I believe that technology will continue to be the biggest driver of innovation, and forces that I talked about that are going to shape the next 3 to 5 years, technology will play a pretty critical role in it. The other piece that we think about, that winners have taken a very user-centric approach. Now, what is a user-centric approach versus a product-centric approach? So when we think about a product, we ask a question: what does the product do? How will it work? How much will it cost to make? That's how we take a product-centric approach. We're thinking about a product. User-centric approach is about, I as a user, what do I need to solve? I as a user, why will it be used? If we ever took a product-centric approach, we would never be able to come up with a camera phone. It just wouldn't have happened. Because if somebody said, I mean, let's go back to if you had a cell phone in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, that cell phone had, the only capability was you could phone someone, and then you had a numeric keypad, and you could probably text somebody some very, very short message, because it was painful to text it. Because if you had to write a message, ABC was all on the number 2, and if you had to get to C, you had to press the number 2 3 times. Imagine doing that. And somebody said to you and say, okay, I want to improve this phone, right? How do I do it? I'm going to put all my energy in getting the voice quality well. I'm going to put all my energy in getting the coverage well, but I'm not going to think about putting a camera in, because that is not what the product is supposed to do. Because the question we are answering is, what does the product do? How will it work? And how much will it cost me to make it? If I'm thinking about the user, then I'll say, what do we need to solve? Right? And people said, look, there are great moments happening all around us, and I can't carry a bulky camera with me. I know I'm going to carry my phone. Can I actually capture those moments on my phone? So we needed to solve that. Why will it be used? Right? It'll be used because people want to capture those moments, and those moments are happening all the time. And that's why you can see the number of pictures taken today are astronomically more than the pictures taken when we used to have the regular film cameras, or even digital cameras. But the pictures taken now are enormously more. And then how much value will it create? How valuable is it for me to be able to take a picture that I'm with my friends? I didn't bring my camera, but I want to take a picture because it's a great moment that I'm enjoying with my friends. So user-centric approach, very different from product-centric approach. Now let's talk about our business, which is the business of claims. And someone says, look, I have the technology and I can do automated accident detection, which you can do now, right? So you can actually, your car can actually detect when it's an accident. The product-centric approach will be, you'll detect an accident, you'll ask the user to take pictures of the accident, you'll transmit the pictures to the insurance company, you'll use the pictures to adjust the claim, and you'll issue the payment for repair. And you'll say, look, I've just made the process a lot better, it's a lot simpler, the customer only has to take some pictures, and I can get this, I can get them the payment for the repair really fast. So product-centric. Now let's look at what happens in a user-centric approach. You use the same technology, you detect an accident. But the first and foremost thing is you want to ask the user if everyone is okay, right? That is the human piece. That is what somebody is concerned about, right? That is why you're saying, not what can the product do, but what problem am I trying to solve? If no response or airbags deployed, then call ambulance. Ask if the car is drivable. If not, order a taxi. If for everyone okay, then require some pictures. So it's a very different customer experience that you're creating with the same technology than what you used on the left-hand side of the page that I went through. It's a little bit like BlackBerry versus iPhone, right? If I did a feature set of BlackBerry, it had all the features. You could send email, you could browse. It was painful to browse on it, but you could browse, right? You could send messages. It had an address book. On a feature set basis, you will not be able to find a reason why someone should switch from a BlackBerry to an iPhone. But from a customer experience perspective, it's completely different. Let's take another example. Used car buying experience. And right now there's a big shortage of cars. I'm sure some of you have had to resort to buy used cars. I certainly have done that because it's just impossible to get cars. Now let's compare someone who has been established in the industry since 1993, has 225 locations, and had a complete monopoly, if I can use the word, and I'm not using the term legally, I'm just saying as a, in spirit, on the used car market. Now, if you've been to CarMax, what was the experience? You drive the car to a location, a trained appraiser assesses the value of the trade-in, the car has to be taken to the dealer, and then while the car is being evaluated for a trade-in, the agent tries to sell a customer a car and says, hey, your trade-in value could go against this car, right? That was the traditional model. Now let's compare to Carvana, the fastest, youngest company to make it to the Fortune 500 list. You never leave your home, right? Right there, you can see the big difference, right? I have to make an appointment, drive to a CarMax store, which may be 5 miles away, 10 miles away. Right now I'm sitting on my couch. I take up my phone and I enter my VIN number, and out comes what the price of the car is going to be. I probably answered another 4 or 5 questions to make sure there are no dings on the car. It's not a, it's not a salvage, but I'm probably answering no more than 5 to 7 questions, because when you put your VIN number, 90% of the information it's able to pull, including accident history. And the online model uses sophisticated analytics, tells me what the price is. I accept the price, and immediately once I accept the price, it comes back and says, these cars may be of interest to you. Because they know what car I'm selling, they know what I'm selling it for, they probably profiled me somehow, and they can come back. Now compare that buying experience to going to CarMax. And the other thing is, the big advantage for Carvana is they don't need an inventory on a lot. That inventory could be sitting somewhere, right? In the CarMax side, you have 100 cars on the lot, 200 cars on the lot. You see those 200 cars and then say, well, this car is located, you're in Georgia, this car is located in Ohio, we can get it shipped over. But in Carvana, I can see all the cars that are in their inventory, right? On my phone. So huge difference. Again, CarMax would be a product-centric approach, and Carvana would be a user-centric approach. And these have evolved, right? There was a time when we all wanted to go to a car dealership to buy a car. Now, if I can do that sitting on my couch, it actually works. So, what are the sort of operating shifts to achieve this, right? So first and foremost, you have to begin to invest in an improved customer journey. It is not possible to assume that this is just going to happen by itself. And you have to have very deliberate. You can't say, I'm going to invest in technology and that'll fix the customer experience journey. You actually have to invest in the customer experience journey and then figure out what technology is going to get you there. I think a lot of times I've seen businesses, and we've made these mistakes as well in the past, where we've said, okay, let's go build the new technology system and that'll improve the customer journey. It might improve the product. It doesn't always improve the customer journey. Second, you have to hire people for their capabilities, not skills. And let me spend a minute on this. Capabilities are things like ability to learn, work ethic, ability to collaborate, ability to have empathy. Skills are like, I can code in this language, or I can, I'm really good at sales. You can teach people skills. It takes a long time to teach them capabilities. And if you are going to transform the customer experience journey, you want people on your team who have diverse capabilities, because those are the things that you can't teach them. It takes a lifetime to get up to speed on capabilities. Third, accelerating your digital transformation for simplification. Again, not doing digital transformation because it's cool, because if you do it, you can build a better system. It's because you are truly simplifying the ecosystem that you're working in. Because if you simplify your ecosystem, it will work better for your clients to interface with you, understand you, and use your products. Deepening the core competencies and expanding into adjacencies. As we were just talking about Carvana as an example, right? They have adjacencies that they've developed into, right? They've bought an auction company because it allows them to auction the cars better that they're buying, and then also see the cars that are coming in and buy them off during an auction. So they are sort of going into an adjacency. But your core competency has to be good. If they can't find cars and they can't deliver cars, there's no point expanding into an adjacency. So really deepening your core competency, knowing what your signature strength is and building on that, because that's why customers come to you. You cannot weaken that. And then finally, there is no one company that'll be able to do it all. Yes, Amazon's trying to do everything, and more power to them. But not all companies are going to have the kind of scale and the resources that Amazon has. So you have to work and build network of partnerships, right? So the vendors that provide you things, like we're all seeing the supply chain crisis. For companies that have built strategic partnerships where they're connected into the network, it's not like they're not having supply chain issues, but they're certainly less than companies that treated their partners purely as vendors. and they're now sort of paying the price for that. So these are some of the operating shifts. I call them no regret moves, because I think that these kind of shifts help you reshape how your company is, how it reacts to certain situations, how quickly it can pivot, how dynamic it is, and then really move forward on that customer journey. And then culture, right? Empowering your workforce at the point of sale. There's a great example of a story of a large luxury hotel, and there was a gentleman who used to stay at this hotel, and he used to use a cane, and he was staying there for a week. On the third day, the janitor who was cleaning saw this person really limping, and the janitor said, Mr. So-and-so, what happened? And he said, well, I had my cane, and I somehow have misplaced my cane. And remember, this is a janitor. The janitor says, no problem. He goes down, he takes his broomstick, cuts it to size, and brings it back and says, I'm going to go get a cane for you, but in the meantime, you can use this to walk, right? This was a janitor. He's not in customer service. He's not responsible to make sure that that the customer is walking okay. And the cane is not a product that is provided by the bank, by the hotel. So, but he felt empowered at that point of contact, at that moment of truth, when he was interacting with that customer, to say, my job is to create a better customer experience, whether that is in terms of how the bathrooms are cleaned and the rooms are cleaned, or whatever it means to make life comfortable for the guests that are staying at our hotel, right? So great example of empowering the workforce. Advocating a growth mindset, right? We can do this, we can do better, we can get there, not accepting mediocrity. Hugely, hugely important as a culture if you're going to be customer centric. Clear purpose. Why do we exist? Right? Why are we in business? Now, our business is to restore lives, businesses, and communities. That's why we exist. That is our clear purpose. That is why we exist. If we didn't exist, lives won't be restored. They might be restored by someone else, but it won't be restored by us. That's why we exist. Defining the way that business creates differentiated experience. Like, why us? Like, why do we exist, but why us? Why would you choose us? What's the differentiation that we're creating? And having a culture that is absolutely clear on that is extremely important. If you have a culture where somebody says we exist because we're low price, and somebody says we exist because we're the fastest to market, and then somebody says we exist because we've got the best quality, you're not differentiated, because your experiences are differentiated in those microcosms, but they may not be, because you're not focused as a company on one. So defining the way of business that creates differentiated experience is hugely important, and having that culture is hugely important for you to drive customer centricity and growth. And then connecting every aspect of the organization with the customer, right? Whether you're in finance, whether you're in HR, whether you're in legal, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in IT, right? Whether you're in operations, whether you're in sales, you have to be connected with the customer in some aspect. You need to know, what is it that the customer comes to us for? What do we solve for the customer? Just like the example that I just shared with you, that janitor was not in customer service department, but he was clear on why they exist. That is to make the stay of their guest comfortable. He knew what was their differentiated value proposition, and that was to make every customer feel special. And he was connected to the customer. So having that culture where everyone is clear on why we connect with the customer, how we connect with the customer. In finance, make sure every bill is right every single time, right? In IT, system doesn't go down when our customer is interacting with us. In HR, make sure you hire people who have empathy, because they have to deliver this differentiated experience. So every part of the business needs to be clear about how they play a role in being connected with the customer. So, in a nutshell, you take a winning model, you then take a product approach, which is user-centric as opposed to product-centric. You make operating changes in your organization, and you make cultural changes in your organization, and all that put together creates a truly differentiated customer experience, a truly differentiated customer journey. So Professor Parvatyar, I will pause here for questions.
Thank you very much. That was an outstanding presentation, Mr. Rohit Verma. You laid the groundwork very well. You made the case for customer centricity. And now you've also provoked a number of professors to ask questions. So I'm going to go first with the professor questions. I have some from my side as well.
Okay.
But let me start with Professor Ramkumar, S. Ramkumar, Sastadri Ramkumar. He is one of our distinguished professors here at the Texas Tech University.
Okay.
And he's in textile engineering.
Oh, very cool.
So his question is that one of the aspects that enabled rehab after COVID-19 was government support, such as subsidies. Going forward, how one could plan such support mechanism, while in principle, free world economy is against such support systems.
Oh,
so
wow,
he's got a wider question for you beyond customer centricity.
Yeah. Look, I think that I'm certainly not an expert on subsidies, but subsidies have a role to play, and they have an important role to play. I call it, if you take a little plant and you plant it and it's a seedling, it needs some help and support, and it needs some protection, right? It needs protection where you don't want to plant it in the middle of a path where someone's going to crush it. You don't want to plant it somewhere where an animal can eat it. You don't want to plant it where it won't get its nutrition. So you want to protect it, give it some protection. But once it grows into a 3-foot shrub or a 4-foot plant and starts to take the form of a tree, it probably doesn't need the same kind of protection. Even if it's in the middle of the road, people start avoiding it and driving out all around it. So I think you need that kind of protection for some period of time, and then things need to become self-sustaining, I believe. And again, this is a personal view of Rohit. This is not representative of our organization, but that's sort of what I think about it.
Sure. There's another set of questions from Professor Ajay Kohli.
Okay.
Ajay Kohli is a distinguished marketing professor, Georgia Tech, and he's in your backyard there.
Yeah. Actually, Professor Kohli, I just recently joined the industry advisory board for Georgia Tech, and my daughter is a student there. So, great to hear from you. But go ahead with the question.
So he's got a set of questions. First question is, he's first of all thanking you for a very interesting talk. His question is, how do you encourage or get existing long-time frontline employees to shift their mindset from product-centric focus to user-centric focus?
Very great question. Great question. So first and foremost, the frontline employees are often lost in the fog of war. And what I mean by that is that they know the part that they're doing, but they often don't know how it fits into the big picture. And I think the first thing that we do is make sure that every individual in the organization understands where you fit in the value chain of the industry or of the work, and where their work contributes into that value chain. So I think that's number one. We call it the commander's intent, right? You always need to know what the commander's intent is, because when you are on the field and you're making a decision, you need to make sure what that intent is and not follow a basic simple order, because when you do that, you may or may not actually achieve the objective. You may follow the order, but the objective may not be achieved because the context is changing for them every single day. So as an example, we recently introduced a new technology for our adjusters. So when the adjusters, let's say someone's home is damaged, God forbid, the adjuster has to go in and measure everything, like, how big the window is, how big the door is, what's the front look like, what's the back look like. And it used to take 3 hours or so. And we then gave them this ability to take 8 pictures of the house. And using those 8 pictures, we rendered a full 3D model with full set of measurements and everything for them. So that 3-hour process came down to like 45 minutes to an hour, right? So huge cut down in terms of the time that they spend at a house. The intent of saving that time is for them to spend more time with the policyholder, because when the policyholder has had a claim, it's probably one of the worst days of their lives. to actually put an arm around that person and say, look, it's going to be okay. We're actually going to help you get through this. So the intent there is to actually create time for them to spend time with the customer, not create time that they get their work done and then go home and play golf, right? So we're not saying like, hey, we want you to minimize time at this place because we're giving you this tool. We're giving you this tool so that you're going to spend less time in doing measurements and more time helping that customer see that it's going to be okay. So I think that when you do that with constant communication and also amplifying the stories of how people are making a difference is what leads to the change. Because I think if people don't understand how they fit in, where they fit in, they are extremely resistant to change. And you can have all the strategies and all the programs built in your headquarters or in your regional offices, and then they don't take hold because the individual that is delivering to the customer only understands the product, doesn't understand the problem that you're trying to solve for the user.
Very good. He also has another question over there. Could you give us a couple of examples of how you connect legal and accounting to the customer?
Great question. So legal, actually, there is a pretty clear connection of legal because you often have your legal team working on the contract itself. You have your legal team making sure that all the terms and conditions on there are correct. So you have the legal team often working. And the other thing that I often do is that I'll connect so let's say we have a customer, let's say we have an insurance company. I'll connect our general counsel with their general counsel, and I'll say, look, you guys need to have a relationship. On the accounting side, probably a little bit harder, but we certainly have the accounting side often work with our team to make sure that the economics of what we expected from that customer relationship is coming through, right? So the accounting has to make sure, I call it the conscience of the business. So accounting has to make sure that everything that we committed as a sales organization, as an ops organization, to the customer is being delivered and is generating the economics that we expected it to generate, right? So they have to hold us true to that. And that's how accounting plays a role. I have often taken our CFO and to customer dinners, to customer meetings, and had our CFO interact. Or if there is a customer who wants to make sure that we are financially sound, I've said, look, why don't you meet with our CFO, and the CFO can go through all of our balance sheet, all of our most recent results, so that you feel comfortable that we have the capability that you're looking for. So there are various ways to connect. I think if I look at particularly on being customer centric or user centric, it is again accounting and legal, understanding where they fit in, and then making sure that we're delivering on that journey. Again, they may not have direct customer contact, but by creating customer contact, by having our GC connect with the client's GC or our CFO connect with the client's organization, they start to get an appreciation for what we as an organization are delivering for our customers.
Great. There are three more questions. I'm going to take one from one of our students, Jacob Bush, first, and he's asking the question, why do you think there's been this big shift from product-centric to customer-centric? That means what was the driver behind it? And has it been innovation in the business industry and paying attention to success factors, or it is more simple than that?
I think that we are on a quest for market share, right? Everybody's on a quest for market share. And then there is also this change where more organizations are becoming purpose-driven. The purpose no longer is let's just go make money. Obviously, we're a capitalistic economy. We are in the world of business, so we want to make money for our shareholders, for our stakeholders. But there is more to it. It's not just about that, right? There's an element of purpose. The second thing, I think the customers are sort of becoming more and more discerning, right? If you think about it, you have a lot more product choices today. You have a lot more research on the product choices that is available to you. So you are a much more informed buyer today than you were before. And as a result of that, you are going to gravitate towards where you think your values, your needs, align most. The other thing is that we as a human being are getting a lot more focused on the experiences. So, a great example of that is it's not like you can't get coffee anywhere. And no offense to the largest coffee chain, their coffee is good, but there are other places where coffee is great as well. But why is it that those other places have not been able to do as well as the largest coffee chain? And I'll leave it up to you to decide who the largest coffee chain is, right? So, but why is that? It's because of the experience that you feel, the ambiance, the whole expression, what you go out there and do. And I think that makes a difference to us. No longer are we beholden to, I just want, and there are people who are very purists who say, I just want good coffee and this place gives good coffee. I don't care that they're not part of this big chain, but I always go to this place because I like their coffee. So you'll always have those purists who are purely going for the product. But then there are people, and a lot of them, because there's a line always at airports, who want to go and experience that because they feel different. And I think that we are getting a lot in touch with our feelings and the experiences that we want to create as human beings than we were probably 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I routinely debate with my parents, and my parents give me this example of when we were young, we used to do these things. And like, I don't know what you guys do. And I find myself now going to my teenage daughter and saying, when we were young, I have to remind myself, hold on a second, I'm sounding like my parents. Stop, stop, stop. But I do think that that's the natural course of evolution.
There's another experience question, but to a different context from Tara Whitehead, Scotland. Tara, by the way, just as an introduction, she is the daughter of Professor Carlton Whitehead. She's one of the family as a supporter for this talk. And
Thank
Tara
you.
was incidentally, she is the digital lead for Cognizant. And incidentally, she was at Emory many years ago when I had the opportunity to be a
very
professor
cool.
as well. So she has a question for you as to what do you think about the future of the office as it pertains to the future of work?
Great question. By the way, I'm in the office and there are 400 people that can be in this building. And I think there are 10 cars in the parking lot today. First and foremost, I think we are on this race to define what the future of work is going to be. And we're trying to say, is it going to be remote? Is it going to be hybrid? Are we going to be all in office? And I think it's too early, right? Like I said, if I could use the medical term, we've just had a stroke and we are rehabilitating from that stroke. So it's going to take us time before we can, so we're going to first crawl, then walk, then run, right? We're still in that phase of crawl. So I think the future of work is going to be very different. There is much higher acceptance level of people not being in the office than there used to be. I was just recently meeting someone, a gentleman who's been in the industry for close to 40 years, who said that they were hiring someone and they just wanted to hire someone in Atlanta because they wanted to be in that office. But they really liked this person that they hired in New York. And she did not want, she had family ties in New York. She did not want to move from New York to Atlanta. And they said, look, we're not able to find someone, let's try her. And they absolutely fell in love with her work. And they said, like, we've actually sold our office since then because we now understand you don't need the office. So I think there will be a lot more acceptance of work remotely. I talk to many employees, both in the US and abroad. And while a lot of them say that they want to come back to work, very few of them want to come back to work 5 days a week. So I do think that there's going to be this new normal of a much more hybrid place, but it is going to settle. I think there's going to be some settlement that's going to happen. My concern is that it's going to be much harder to assess talent, because if this is the only interaction that we're going to have, and it's going to be very transactional, I'm meeting you for a meeting and then I'm off and I'm going to another meeting. I'm not bumping into you at the coffee area. I'm not bumping into you at the lunchroom. I'm not really getting to know you. I'm only getting to know the part of you that you want to show me in a transaction, as opposed to in how you are. And I think that talent assessment will be harder because we'll do more transactional assessment of the talent as opposed to a more holistic assessment. I think the culture creation will be harder because, again, we're having this. So we'll have to actually have a meeting about culture, right? Today, if you think about it, very few organizations have meeting about culture. They have meeting and then they say the culture is what gets created out of the interactions we have. But it's hard to do that when we're doing this. So I think that the work will continue to shift. And I think that we'll have to come up with ways in which things that are missing, like how do we create a holistic view about you and I, how do we create a view of what our culture is. We'll have to figure out how we create those interactions.
And what is going to happen to all the real estate? And all the commercial real estate is going to be sitting all over the cities.
But I think the use of the real estate is going to change, right? So as an example, we at Crawford, we have 700 offices. We're not shutting down our offices, but we're rethinking. So as an example, we have an office in Dallas. We have now one room where we've actually put a ping pong table and a pool table, because I think the office is going to become a little more of a community. Like, let's get together today. Let's get together as a team. More of that than, hey, I come here to really work on my computer, right? I come to work so I can work on my computer. Now, there are other instances where you have to be in the office for compliance reasons because you want to manage the private, like, if I'm on the phone with customers and taking down their credit card numbers or giving them private information about their healthcare, I probably don't want to do that from home. So in the long run, or create other ways to do it so that it can be done virtually, but it'll be much harder. So I think this is still an evolving place. I don't think so that we are set anywhere, but I definitely think the future of work is more hybrid than more in person.
You got 3 more questions from India, so let me take those.
Okay, sure. Yeah, wow.
I know we're running out of time.
Late.
People from India. So first one is from Sashibala Rai. She is with DEFCON Consulting. She also is a faculty. In service sector, the customers, client demand more of physical meeting rather than virtual to establish good rapport. So how do you address this? Yeah,
which goes back to the holistic assessment of talent that I was talking about. I think it is hard. And we have done, I want to say 5 or 6 acquisitions in during the COVID period. And one of the challenges that we've had is to do an acquisition, to really meet with the person who's running the company, that we couldn't do. So we had to really do it this way. And it has been tough. So again, I think that transactional things will continue to happen for some time. But as things open up, people say, look, I want to go meet the person. So I have been, our president, as soon as things were opened up, our president flew down to Latin America to meet with the team that we had acquired. We had acquired a team in Dubai. So our president of Europe flew to Dubai as soon as things opened up to meet with the team. So I think that desire is there. And I don't think so that it's going to go away. Certainly, if there are restrictions, we can do it and we'll figure out a way to make it happen. But I think in the long term, that's why I say it's hybrid. Those are going to change.
There's a question from Professor Gaurav Sood from Amity University in India.
No.
His question is, with the changing consumer behavior due to pandemic or the global political situation, how does it impact an organization's customer-centric strategy?
I think it defines it. The changing consumer behavior is what is designing the strategy. And if the global political situation is one of the factors that I think is going to continue, like I said, is continue to push the industry and shape the industry. So that's why I keep focusing on your capabilities in the organization have to be much more agile than what they have been to pivot, to make change. And that's why I said the business models that you need to be much more scalable, much more repeatable, and much more dynamic. So as an example, if there's a geopolitical situation and because of that, you cannot provide services in one country, you should be able to pivot on that and say, okay, no worries, I can pull my product back from there, but it still works in the rest of the world. And those are the kind of things that have to be part of your operating design as you look forward. So I completely agree with Professor Sood that these things will continue to shape, and the pandemic and the global political situation, the new emerging risks, the data and analytics, all of these things are going to shape what the product-centric journey is. Customer-centric journey is.
I know we're all out of time. There are so many questions, so many compliments.
I
know you're running out of time, but I'm just going to read 2 of the questions so that you can have that. And one is from India, from Paurav Shukla. How do you reflect on the role of context on achieving user or customer centricity? For instance, in case of Netflix and Peloton, while they say a substantial rise in the number of subscribers in COVID times, both companies have lost substantial market value in recent times, while their customer centricity has not changed. but the context has.
Absolutely.
From Paul Fickler.
Absolutely. And remember what I said to you was that this is an era of ironies and contradictions, right? These companies advantage from a context, but the only reason they could advantage from the context was that they had a model that was low touch but high customer engagement. And yes, I personally don't give a lot of credence to valuation that the stock market is giving, because that, and when you talk about value, but at the end of the day, the value creation that they're doing for an individual customer really has not changed, right? The view of the market has changed, that because now people have an alternative, they're going to pick another product because they have an alternative. We always knew that they could pick an alternative, but Zoom wouldn't have picked up to the level today it is without without them having a model that could pivot and take advantage of people not being able to go outside. Peloton wouldn't have been able to pick up because of that. I think grocery shopping has changed forever. Number of people who are now using curbside pickup is a lot higher than it was. So I think value has been created. Customer journey has been changed. Yeah, how stock market values it, there are a lot of other factors that go into it. So I'm not going to go into that, but I do believe that value has been created. I do believe that behavior has been altered, and has been altered for good.
And I think you've addressed this question, but I'm going to repeat this one from Ariella Grossman. In the example you talked about the janitor providing a cane to a guest, it showed that his employer empowered him to solve a problem, whatever it takes in your opinion. How influential is having an empowered workforce for a customer-centric approach? Also, what steps can an organization take to ensure that their employee feel empowered to step up and make their own decisions when a situation arrives?
So if you go back to the presentation, the number one thing I said in terms of culture, in reshaping your culture to be more customer-centric, is empowered frontline employees, right? They have to be empowered because they are the ones where rubber hits the road. They are the ones that have the most moments of truth with the customer. So I think that is absolutely the number one thing. Steps that an organization can take is really celebrate and amplify when someone does that, so that others say, okay, I can do it. And when things don't look, you don't want anyone to bet the company. So you don't want to say, okay, everybody's empowered to bet the company, right? That's not what you're doing. Or everybody's empowered to sell our products for free. But it's about what is the experience you're trying to create, and are they empowered to deliver on that experience? So if the experience that we're trying to create is to restore lives, business, and communities, and someone is there and their home is damaged, but it's not damaged, but they don't have a policy, we can't do anything about that, right? We can guide them. We can tell them, look, you don't have a policy, you're not going to be covered. But if they have a policy, if they're covered, and they say that, look, I have someone who is sick, you're telling me that I can only have you visit me tomorrow, but can you actually have someone visit today? Then that employee should feel empowered to say, you know what, I'm going to reprioritize and I'm going to go visit them today because they actually need my help more than someone else, because they have a sick child at home, or they have a sick parent at home, or whatever the case may be. So absolutely, you need to amplify the behaviors that are good. And then you need to tell people at the end of the day, the purpose that they're delivering on is to restore lives, business, and communities. And that's what they have to deliver on. And then when they do well, amplify that. And if they do something that doesn't work, instead of making it a big deal, go and coach.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. I know you've got another meeting to go to, and we've already exceeded the time. So great presentation, great talk, great discussion. I have lots of people complimenting this, both
thank you.
Students as well as other guests. We next time we got to have you in person over here.
I would love to. I would love to. But thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, I feel passionate about this topic. Hopefully, some of that passion came through, not too much. It was a pleasure being here, and I really enjoyed the questions. Great questions, clearly, very insightful listeners. So I look forward to staying connected with you, Professor Parvatyar. And again, thank you to the Texas Tech University for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, and thanks also. Let me also take an opportunity, quick 1 minute, to thank all the attendees, everybody who joined in from the various parts of the world. There was a person from Switzerland also, by the way, Gautam Chalagala. Dr. Gautam Chalagala was also there, who used to be at Georgia Tech at one time, as well as people from India and the US. But I must also thank my colleagues, Professor Dennis Arnett for joining in at that time, as well as Matthew Winfrey and Lisa Bittencourt, who have helped put the program together. Without their help, it can't be done. And thank you so much, Mr. Rohit Verma. Greatly appreciated. It was a great talk, and we look forward to your next presentation sometime soon.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.